Welcome. Today we are undertaking a very necessary, a very difficult examination.
We are.
We're going to be looking closely at the sources surrounding the mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School. It took place in Newtown, Connecticut on December 14th, 2012.
And it's an event that, it really created a dividing line in the American consciousness on so many issues. School safety, mental health, firearms.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
given the solemn nature of what we're discussing, we want to be clear that we approach this with the deepest respect for the victims, for the survivors, and for the entire Newtown community.
That respect is paramount. This was a catastrophic event in a community that thought it was completely safe. And the investigations that followed, they force a really brutally honest look at several systemic failures.
And that's our focus here, to move past the initial media reports, the initial shock, and really scrutinize the official state findings.
Right. We'll look at the timeline, the chilling profile of the perpetrator that emerged, and then the legal and legislative reverberations that are still being felt today.
So our goal is clarity and thoroughness.
Mm-hmm.
We're focusing on the facts, the investigations, and the societal repercussions of what remains the deadliest elementary school shooting in U.S. history.
And the deadliest mass shooting in Connecticut's history.
So to start, we really need to establish the context of the location. Newtown, Connecticut.
It's so important because it was, by every definition, a safe, insulated, northeastern suburb.
The sources really highlight this. They point out it was a town of about 28,000 people.
And in the 10 years before December 2012, there had been only one homicide. One.
In the entire town. It was just not a place where something like this was ever supposed to happen.
Exactly. And that violation of expectation, it just magnified the horror.
In Sandy Hook Elementary School itself, SHES, it served about 456 children.
That's right, kindergarten through fourth grade.
And the sources detail the security protocols they had. For the time, they were seen as relatively rigorous.
They were. All visitors had to be admitted individually. There was a video monitor system. You had to show ID.
And the doors were locked.
Critically, yes. The doors to the whole school were locked every day at 9:30 a.m., right after morning arrivals were done.
But the violence that day, it actually began before the perpetrator even got to the school.
Yes. This is a part of the story that sometimes gets overlooked, but it's critical context. The first victim was Nancy Lanza. She was 52, the perpetrator's mother.
And the sources are clear on this. Sometime before 9:30 that morning, her 20-year-old son, Adam Lanza, fatally shot her in their home.
He used a .22 caliber Savage Mark II rifle. It was one of several guns that she legally owned.
Investigators later found her in her bed, still in her pajamas.
4 gunshot wounds to the head. It was a truly dark beginning to an even darker day. And from there, Lanza took his mother's car and he drove to Sandy Hook Elementary.
So let's move to the attack on the school itself.
Yeah.
Those security measures were designed specifically to stop someone from just walking in.
They were, but Lanza found a way to bypass them almost instantly.
This was shortly after 9:35 a.m.
At about 9:35 a.m., yes. He drives up to the school. The locked front doors don't deter him. He shoots right through a large plate glass panel next to the door,
Shattering it completely.
allowing him to just step over the threshold and into the main hallway. And he was armed with, extreme lethality.
The primary weapon was his mother's Bushmaster XM15E2S, a semi-automatic rifle.
And he had 10 fully loaded 30-round magazines for it.
10 a magazine.
10. He also had 2 handguns, a 10mm Glock and a 9mm 6-hour, though the 6-hour was never actually fired.
His appearance, it suggested a lot of preparation, didn't it? Even if some of the initial reports got it wrong.
He was dressed in all black. He had yellow earplugs, sunglasses, black hat. Now, the initial reports often said he was wearing body armor.
Which is incorrect.
Investigators later confirmed it was inaccurate. But he was wearing an olive green utility vest, and that vest was crucial.
Because that's where he kept the magazines.
Exactly. The pockets of that vest held those 10 30-round magazines, the sheer amount of ammunition he had ready, plus the earplugs. It all points to a chilling level of preparation for a sustained, loud, high-volume attack.
The cost of what happened in the next few minutes it's just catastrophic.
It is.
The final toll was 20 children, all 6 or 7 years old, and 6 adult staff members at the school.
Not including his mother, an unimaginable human cost.
But the investigation reports, they reveal something else. They show that the actions of the staff in just those first few seconds likely prevented an even worse tragedy.
Yes. When the first shots rang out, the school's intercom system was on, so the sound was transmitted throughout the building.
And the principal, Don Hochsprung, And the school psychologist, Mary Sherlock, they heard it.
And they didn't hesitate. They didn't hide. They ran directly toward the sound of the gunfire.
That decision to run toward the danger, it's an immediate act of self-sacrifice.
It was. A faculty member who was with them later testified that as they ran, they were yelling, "Shooters, stay put," to warn everyone else.
A human alarm system.
The most effective one possible in that moment. Tragically, both Hochsprung and Sherlock were killed almost immediately by Lanza.
But that warning, that shout, it was critical.
It was life-saving. It allowed other staff members to realize what was happening and start barricading their doors.
We should just pause on that. The instinct for most people would be to hide, to run away. They ran toward it.
Their sacrifice served as that warning. Lead teacher Natalie Hammond was with them. She was wounded, shot in the leg, and then shot again.
But she survived.
Her survival came down to pure instinct. She played dead in the hallway, and when there was a momentary pause in the shooting, she showed incredible fortitude.
She crawled back to the conference room she'd just left.
Yes, and pressed her body against the door, barricading it, preventing him from getting in there.
And then you have the stories of the teachers inside the classrooms. The protective instincts. They are just agonizing to read about, but so inspiring.
They show such profound, instantaneous bravery. Teacher Victoria Lee Soto. She managed to hide some of her first-grade students. Some accounts say in a closet, some say a bathroom.
The details vary, but the outcome.
The outcome is consistent. She was killed as she was trying to keep herself between the shooter and her students. The children who survived from her class credited her with saving their lives.
And then there's Anne-Marie Murphy, a special education teacher.
Yes. When the first responders finally entered the school and found her, she was physically covering a 6-year-old boy, Dylan Hockley.
Shielding him.
Shielding him with her own body. Both had succumbed to their wounds, but her final moments were spent trying to protect him. Those actions. Hochsprung, Sherlock, Soto, Murphy. It's selfless valor.
There are also these critical details about survival, moments of quick thinking or even just chance.
Right. Take first-grade teacher Caitlin Roig. She acted so fast. She got 15 of her students into a tiny classroom bathroom and barricaded the door.
But there's another detail about her classroom that's just incredible.
It's a fascinating detail. It has to do with the small window in her classroom door. After a lockdown drill a while back, she had covered it with a piece of black construction paper.
And she'd just forgotten to take it down.
She'd forgotten to remove it. And investigators believe that Lanza may have bypassed her room entirely because that covered window made it look like the room was empty. That one piece of paper may have saved 15 children.
And then there's the testimony for the children who survived. It gives you the most stark evidence of the horror.
It's truly devastating. The sources recount the experience of one little girl, just 6 years old. She survived by playing dead in a classroom bathroom among the bodies of her friends.
And when she was finally reunited with her mother,
her comment was, "Mommy, I'm okay, but all my friends are dead."
It's awful.
There was another girl who survived in a bathroom. She reported hearing a little boy crying out, "Help me, I don't want to be here."
And the sources say Lanza responded to him.
He did. He reportedly responded with just callous cruelty. "Well, you're here." And then the sound of shots immediately followed. It shows a calculated malice. This wasn't a moment of frenzied panic on his part.
Okay, so let's turn to the investigation now. And the timeline that the first responders were working with, it highlights just how brief and how intensely concentrated this all was.
The speed is shocking. I mean, truly shocking. The first 911 call came in at 9.35 and 39 seconds.
And the last shot?
The last shot was heard at 9.40 and 3 seconds. The forensics confirmed this was Lanza's self-inflicted wound, so the entire attack lasted just 4 minutes and 24 seconds.
And in that time?
In that time frame, he fired 156 rounds, 154 from the rifle, and then 2 from the Glock pistol he used for his suicide.
What about the police response? There's often confusion about arrival versus entry into the building.
That's a very important distinction. The first Newtown police officers began arriving on the street outside the school within 4 minutes of the call, at 9:39 a.m.
But they didn't enter right away.
No. The first officers actually entered the school building itself at 9:45 a.m. That's about 5 minutes after Lanza had already committed suicide.
So, to be clear, he stopped the shooting himself.
He did. No shots were ever fired by law enforcement during the entire incident. Their role became one of evacuation and painstakingly sweeping the school to make sure there were no other threats.
The forensic investigation then revealed a lot about his intent, especially with the weaponry. Let's talk about the ammunition he used.
This is one of the most chilling details, and it comes from the medical examiner, Dr. H. Wayne Carver.
He noted that the Bushmaster rifle was used to kill all 26 victims at the school.
Yes, and Dr. Carver described the injuries as devastating. He pointed out many victims were shot multiple times, but the ammunition itself was highly specific.
It wasn't just standard bullets.
No, not at all. The medical examiner said the bullets were, and I'm quoting here, designed in such a fashion the energy is deposited in the tissue so the bullet stays in.
Can you explain what that means in practical terms?
Absolutely. It means they were likely fragmenting or high-velocity soft-point rounds. They're designed to expand or break apart on impact,
To maximize damage.
to maximize the transfer of energy into the target, rather than just passing through cleanly. The fact that the bullets stayed in the bodies confirms they performed exactly as they were designed to. It maximizes lethal damage, and it virtually guarantees mortality.
So it underscores that this was not random firing. He chose tools for maximum lethality.
Precisely.
Okay, let's move to his home. What did investigators find there that gave them a window into his mindset?
Well, the materials they recovered painted this portrait of extreme isolation and a really macabre obsession.
He tried to cover his tracks, though.
He did. He'd removed the hard drive from his computer and deliberately damaged it before he left for the school. But investigators still managed to recover critical digital evidence.
Not physical evidence.
The physical evidence was damning. They found 3 samurai swords, they found newspaper clippings about other mass shootings, and they found a huge supply of ammunition still in the house.
How much?
Over 1,400 rounds. That's in addition to what he took with him. And there were 3 other legally owned rifles of his mother's still at the home.
But the most shocking piece of evidence, I think, points to this long-standing, obsessive preoccupation he had with violence.
You're talking about this score sheet.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Investigators found that he had spent years, literal years, researching other mass shootings. He was particularly focused on Columbine.
And this spreadsheet?
The centerpiece of this research was a massive spreadsheet. It was 7 feet by 4 feet. It was described by investigators as a score sheet. It meticulously listed around 500 mass murderers, the specific weapons they used, and their kill counts.
500?
500. The scale and the detail of this, it just demonstrates that his actions were the culmination of a long-term, meticulously cultivated pathology. It wasn't a sudden break.
And what else did they find on his computer, on his digital footprint?
They found extensive writings about previous mass shootings. Chillingly, they also recovered 2 videos of suicide by gunshot.
And photos of himself.
Yes, 2 pictures of Lanza pointing guns directly at his own head. And beyond that, they found documents suggesting an interest in pedophilia and a specific document he'd written called Selfish.
What was that about?
It detailed his deeply misogynistic belief in what he saw as the inherent selfishness of women. It just paints this picture of a mind completely immersed in violence, toxicity, and deep resentment.
Which brings us to his mental and developmental history. This is what Lager reports identified as a key systemic failure.
It is. Lanza had actually been a student at Sandy Hook Elementary. He went there for 4.5 years before his difficulties really began.
And the shift to middle school in 2004 was a major trigger.
Catastrophic for him. He developed profound extreme anxiety. It was triggered by sensory overload, classroom changes, noise, just general stimulation. It got so bad at one point his mother took him to the emergency room.
So what were the formal diagnoses he eventually received?
At age 13, he was diagnosed with Asperger syndrome, which is now considered part of the autism spectrum. And then a year later, at 14, he was diagnosed with obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, by the Yale Child Study Center.
And the sources detailed just how severe his OCD symptoms were.
They weren't mild habits. These were life-governing compulsions. He was frequently washing his hands. He was changing his socks up to 20 times a day.
20 times a day.
Which meant his mother had to do 3 loads of laundry every day just for his socks. He would use an entire box of tissues just to avoid touching doorknobs.
Was there any attempt to treat this with medication?
Yes, there was one attempt. A clinician at Yale prescribed the antidepressant Celexa, but he only took it for 3 days.
And he had a bad reaction.
A severe, debilitating negative reaction. His mother reported he became disoriented, his speech was disjointed, he was sweating profusely. She described him as practically vegetative, and after that really traumatic experience, he never took medication again.
And this is where the Child Advocate report really zeroes in on the systemic failure, right? The lack of any ongoing support after that point.
Precisely. This is the crucial finding. The report of the Office of the Child Advocate states very explicitly that the extensive recommendations made by Yale.
What were those?
They recommended intensive special education supports, ongoing expert consultation, and rigorous therapeutic supports that were supposed to be embedded into his daily life.
And the report says?
The report says those recommendations went largely unheeded. After 2006, he had virtually no meaningful contact with any mental health professionals, despite the fact that his father later said he suspected Lanza might have developed undiagnosed schizophrenia later in his isolation,
Worsening his condition.
far beyond the initial Asperger's and OCD diagnoses. And this failure to adequately treat and support a young man with a clearly deteriorating severe mental illness is identified as a major missed opportunity by the investigators.
So you had these two major official reports that come out. The 2013 State Attorney's final report, and then the 2014 Office of the Child Advocate report. And they offer really different conclusions on the core question of why this happened.
They really do. The state attorney's report, which came out about 11 months after the shooting, it confirmed Lanza acted alone. It confirmed he planned his attack and his suicide.
But on motivation.
On motivation, their primary conclusion was that the central question of why he did this, or why he specifically targeted Sandy Hook, they said it may never be answered conclusively.
They essentially said it was unknowable.
They threw their hands up, yeah. They just confirmed his obsession with mass murders and his access to firearms.
That conclusion must have been so frustrating for the public, and especially for the families who were just desperate for answers.
It was deeply unsatisfactory, because it sort of implies this was just a random act of evil, rather than what it was, a preventable series of cascading failures.
And this is why that second report from the Office of the Child Advocate a year later was so important.
It was crucial. They refused to accept the unknowable motive idea, and they provided a much more nuanced, though absolutely heartbreaking explanation.
So how did the Child Advocate report frame the cause, if not as a single motive?
They moved away from the idea of a single motive and instead pointed to a cascade of events. Their analysis showed that Lanza's condition wasn't static, it was deteriorating, and rapidly.
And this cascade included what?
It included his total isolation from society, the worsening severity of his OCD, chronic depression and anxiety, and a condition we haven't really touched on yet in depth, profound anorexia.
The anorexia finding. That's an unusual element in the profile of a mass shooter.
It is, and it provides a critical link between his psychiatric decline and his physical decline. The report is explicit about this.
It says he was anorexic to the point of malnutrition.
And probable resultant brain damage. He was 6 feet tall, but he only weighed 112 pounds.
That's a critically dangerous state.
And the authors of the report linked this malnutrition, combined with his autism and OCD, to compounding his risk for suicidal thoughts and his fixation on violence. The core insight is that his severe physical deterioration was making his already fragile mental health even worse.
So the Child Advocate concluded it was this combination, his internal mental health crisis, plus his external fascination with violence.
Exactly. They concluded that Lanza's severe and deteriorating internal mental health problems, coupled with an atypical preoccupation with violence, and this is the key immediate access to deadly weapons. That combination was the definitive recipe for mass murder.
Not one single thing, but a lethal combination.
Where access to the weapons was the final critical ingredient.
Did the Child Advocate offer any more reasoning as to why Sandy Hook Elementary specifically was the target?
They offered a tentative psychological suggestion. It was based on his known anxieties.
Okay.
They posited that mass shooters often target places where they feel they can overpower people. Lanza had this profound social anxiety, a fear of being thwarted or challenged.
So an elementary school.
An elementary school filled with young children and relatively defenseless staff may have been targeted for that very reason. It was a dynamic that allowed him to feel powerful in a world where he otherwise felt completely incapable.
And it all just keeps coming back to the systemic failure in his healthcare journey?
Yes. The report stressed that the lack of any adequate mental health treatment after 2006 was a profound failure. The Child Advocate argued that if his severe mental illness, the anorexia, the OCD, the anxiety, if it had been adequately diagnosed and treated, then one of those critical predisposing factors in that recipe
Might have been mitigated.
Exactly. It underscores that this tragedy wasn't some unpreventable anomaly. It was a culmination of missed opportunities in mental health intervention.
So after the reports came out, the focus really shifted to accountability through the court system. And
Mhm.
this event, it generated some really significant legal precedents, starting with the Lanza family's estate itself.
Right, the very first legal response targeted the estate of Nancy Lanza. The families of the victims sued her estate.
On what grounds?
They asserted that she had failed in her legal duty to properly secure her firearms, that she had allowed her son, who she knew had severe mental health issues, to access them and commit this violence.
And that lawsuit was settled.
Yes, 16 plaintiffs settled that case in December of 2015. They received a total payment of $1.5 million, which was drawn from Nancy Lanza's homeowner's insurance policy.
Then there was the second legal battle, and this one was nationally significant, the one against the gun manufacturer.
This is where you see the legal landscape really start to change. 9 of the families filed a lawsuit against Remington Arms, the manufacturer of the Bushmaster rifle.
But the challenge there was a powerful federal law that shields the gun industry.
An incredibly powerful law, the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, or PLCAA. It was passed in 2005, and it basically grants gun manufacturers this broad immunity from liability when their products are used in crimes. It's the industry's ultimate shield.
So how did the family's legal team find a way around that? It seems almost insurmountable.
They use a really creative and, at the time, unprecedented application of state law. Specifically, the Connecticut Unfair Trade Practices Act.
So their argument wasn't that the gun was defective?
No, that's the key. Their argument was that Remington had marketed the semi-automatic rifle inappropriately to civilians.
What does that mean, inappropriately?
They claimed the company's advertising often mimicked military recruitment language. It presented the weapons in what they called an unfair, unethical, or dangerous manner. Essentially, they argued Remington was marketing a tool of war as an aggressive civilian status symbol, encouraging its use for offensive assaults.
An action that PLCAA does not protect.
Precisely. That distinction, challenging the marketing practice rather than the product itself, that was the crack in the legal shield.
And the courts agreed.
The Connecticut Supreme Court sided with the families in 2019. They ruled that the families could proceed to trial based on that specific marketing argument, and that ruling was monumental.
Why was it so significant?
Because it allowed the families to subpoena Remington's internal documents, all their marketing strategies for the AR-15 platform. When Remington appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, the Commonwealth refused to hear the case, which cemented the family's right to proceed.
And the weight of that potential trial forced a massive settlement.
Exactly. Facing the revelation of those internal marketing documents, Remington ultimately settled with the families for $73 million in February 2022.
Which was a historic victory.
It demonstrated for the first time that state trade practice laws could hold gun manufacturers financially accountable for the misuse of their products if their advertising encouraged unethical or dangerous behavior. It provided a new blueprint for litigation.
Then there was the third major legal front, which focused on the spread of malicious misinformation.
This involved the conspiracy theorist Alex Jones and his InfoWars platform. Jones repeatedly and falsely claimed that the Sandy Hook shooting was a giant hoax.
He called the parents crisis actors.
Yes, he claimed it was all a staged event designed to erode the Second Amendment. And those claims led to years of just brutal harassment and additional trauma for the families. They were forced to defend the reality of their own children's deaths.
But the judicial response to his actions was severe.
Extremely so. Jones was found liable for defamation in several different proceedings. In Texas, he was ordered to pay $4.1 million in compensatory damages and then another $45.2 million in punitive damages.
And that wasn't all.
No. A separate verdict in Connecticut ordered him to pay an additional $965 million to the victims' families. The courts made it absolutely clear that denying a tragedy and generating mass harassment would come at a staggering financial cost.
Jones and InfoWars then filed for bankruptcy in 2022. There was a recent sort of bizarre development with that, wasn't there?
There was. The satirical publication The Onion actually attempted to buy InfoWars at the bankruptcy auction.
I remember that, with the family's backing.
Reportedly with their backing, yes. The intention was to take the platform away from Jones permanently. But a U.S. bankruptcy judge blocked that sale in late 2024, ruling that the auction hadn't encouraged the best possible bids. So while the financial liability is confirmed, actually paying those damages is still a very complex and protracted process because of the bankruptcy.
The tragedy, as you'd expect, immediately reignited the national debate over firearms. It led to a very powerful, though ultimately very divided, political reaction.
The reaction was visceral. In early 2013, President Obama signed 23 executive orders and proposed 12 congressional actions.
And the focus was on a few key measures.
The focus was on mandatory universal background checks for all gun purchases and reinstating the ban on semi-automatic firearms and high-capacity magazines, anything holding more than 10 rounds.
And what was the immediate contrasting response from the major gun rights groups?
Well, the NRA, through its leader Wayne LaPierre, responded forcefully within just a few days. They blamed the tragedy not on the weapon, but on the concept of gun-free school zones.
Which they argued were magnets for killers.
Yes, so their proposed solution was the polar opposite of restriction. They called for armed police officers or guards in every single American school. They even announced a new program, the National School Shield Emergency Response Program.
And that response just starkly defined the political battle lines.
The lines that really continue to dominate the discussion to this day.
So, while federal action stalled out, several states did move quickly to pass new laws.
New York was the first. They passed the SAFE Act in January 2013. But Connecticut, being the site of the tragedy, passed a really comprehensive major gun control law in April of 2013.
And that law was far-reaching.
It required universal background checks for all firearm sales, it banned high-capacity magazines over 10 rounds, and it banned over 100 specific types of guns by name, dramatically expanding their assault weapons ban. And crucially, it also created the first state-level registry in the U.S. specifically for dangerous weapon offenders.
But the federal efforts, which actually had huge public support, they collapsed.
That failure really defined the political aftermath. Despite massive public sentiment, polls at the time suggested over 90% of Americans supported expanded background checks, the federal efforts were defeated.
The assault weapons ban of 2013.
Defeated in the Senate in April 2013. And so was the crucial Manchin-Toomey Amendment, which was the bipartisan bill to expand background checks nationally.
The failure of that amendment in particular, that was a bipartisan effort. It says so much about the political reality of that moment.
It showed that the political power of lobbying and the filibuster was stronger than the immediate public outcry. That moment became an inflection point. It signaled that even the worst imaginable tragedy, the killing of 20 first graders, was not enough to overcome the political obstacles to enacting even consensus-based federal gun reform. And that stalemate has largely persisted ever since.
Separately from the gun debate, the shooting also spurred a renewed debate about the influence of violent video games.
Yes, this became a very common media trope right after the shooting, mainly because Lanza was known to spend a lot of time playing games.
Games like Left 4 Dead, Call of Duty, Doom.
Those were on the list, yes. But that whole narrative was significantly undermined by the official state attorney's report.
Which found what?
Which concluded there was ultimately no link found between video games and Lanza's motive for the shooting.
So it sounds like the focus on violent games was maybe a way for people to grasp for an understandable external cause instead of grappling with all the complex internal factors.
I think that's a fair assessment. The sources support a much more nuanced view. The state attorney noted he also spent a lot of time playing non-violent games.
Like Super Mario Bros.
And notably, Dance Dance Revolution. He would play DDR for hours on end, and the report described it as a way for him to contain anxiety-producing impulses and thoughts.
So it was a coping mechanism.
The Child Advocate report also noted that internet and video game addiction is highly comorbid with severe psychiatric disorders like OCD and anxiety. So in Lanza's case, the games, regardless of the genre, were arguably more of a symptom of his profound isolation and mental distress, not the root cause of the violence itself.
The sources show that the Newtown community, they had to face these immediate and just monumental decisions about how to handle the physical reality of the tragedy. They couldn't just continue using a site of such immense suffering.
No, the school was closed instantly. It became an ongoing crime scene. So the immediate solution was to relocate the students to an unused school in the next town over, in Monroe. They actually renamed that school Sandy Hook for continuity.
And then they had to decide what to do with the original building.
It was a very difficult choice. In 2013, the residents of Newtown voted overwhelmingly to demolish the original school building.
A painful but necessary decision for the town's collective healing, I imagine.
It was done with that goal in mind, to remove the physical reminder of the violence. The demolition started in October 2013 and was finished by December. They wanted to ensure nothing remained that could attract morbid curiosity or serve as a gruesome marker.
And what replaced it? It really speaks to the new, chilling reality of school safety in America.
A new Sandy Hook Elementary School was built on that same site. It was funded by a $50 million state grant, and it opened in 2016. And it reflects this new era of school security.
It has extensive modern security features.
Layers of security, bulletproof glass, perimeter fencing, fortified safe rooms. It's a state-of-the-art facility, but the fact that it's necessary is, in itself, a tragic legacy.
The perpetrator's home was also dealt with, to ensure there wouldn't be some grim memorial or focus on him.
That was another critical step for the community. The town of Newtown acquired the Lanza home at no cost in 2014 because its notoriety made it impossible to sell.
And they tore it down.
The town voted unanimously to demolish it in 2015, and the land was deliberately left as open space. That decision served to erase the physical location where the matricide happened and where the mass murder was planned.
And out of all this devastation, the victims' families, they channeled their grief into creating these lasting organizations and memorialization efforts.
The determination to create something positive is just profound. The Sandy Hook Permanent Memorial Commission was appointed, and after years of planning, the final memorial opened in November of 2022.
What's it like?
It's designed for solemn reflection. It features a stone basin with the engraved names of the victims and a sycamore tree at its center. And beyond that, so many organizations emerged from the family's activism. Most notably, Sandy Hook Promise, which focuses on violence prevention programs, and the Jesse Lewis Choose Love movement.
But the long-term psychological toll of this trauma, it remains so evident even years later.
Tragically so. The source material notes the suicide of Jeremy Richmond in March 2019. He was the father of one of the victims, Aviel Richmond.
And his wife spoke publicly about it.
She did. She explained that he had succumbed to the grief that he could not escape. And that incident just tragically underscores the enduring, devastating psychological trauma that mass violence inflicts on surviving family members long after the headlines fade.
And just recently, there was a major, very poignant milestone for the children who survived that day.
In June of 2024, about 60 students who were first graders at Sandy Hook when the shooting happened, they graduated from Newtown High School.
That must have been incredibly emotional.
The ceremony was, the principal read out the names of the 20 classmates who should have been graduating alongside them, and it was followed by a moment of silence. It was just a profound and bittersweet moment. It marked the passage of time and the incredible difficulty of moving forward while constantly carrying that shared grief. So as we try to synthesize the overwhelming complexity that's revealed in these official reports, I think the core theme is clear.
That the tragedy was a confluence of multiple catastrophic failures.
Exactly. It was the unique pathology of Adam Lanza, that profound isolation, the severe, untreated mental illnesses like OCD, anxiety, and the anorexia, and that combined with his atypical, cultivated preoccupation with mass violence.
And crucially, his immediate, unfettered access to high-capacity weapons.
The reports make it evident there was no single why. There was a series of mitigating factors that were all missed.
And the response to this horror, it really demonstrated this powerful juxtaposition. You have the immediate localized tragedy in this previously safe town, and it forced these vast, enduring national and legal changes.
It did. This single event led directly to historic movements, like the successful $73 million settlement against Remington for its marketing. That established a whole new legal precedent for accountability.
And it also led to those massive defamation judgments against people who peddled denial and misinformation, like Alex Jones.
Sandy Hook didn't just result in grief, it permanently altered security procedures in schools all across the country, and it provided necessary new legal blueprints for holding those who manufacture weapons or who propagate dangerous misinformation accountable. It's a terrible legacy, but it's one that demanded and received a reckoning in the halls of justice.
This analysis gives us a very sober and, I think, a very necessary understanding of the facts and the forces that were at play in this heartbreaking American tragedy.
Indeed. It leaves us to reflect on how preventative measures, whether that's through comprehensive mental health intervention, community engagement, or legislative barriers to weapon access, how all of those things must be continuously strengthened to ensure that such a lethal recipe for mass murder can never be completed again.
Thank you for walking us through these complex facts today.
My pleasure.
And to you, the listener, thanks for listening.